Rebecca Mitchell is my name. I passed away last year at the age of 28. Technically speaking, my parents were informed by the physicians that I wouldn't make it through the night. How did they react? She isn't actually our daughter. She is not owed anything by us. They then abandoned me to die by myself. They arrived at my grandmother's home a week later, prepared to claim the inheritance she had left me. But there was no one in my bed. A letter is all that is pending. Their lives collapsed after they read that. You must have felt abandoned too, if you're watching this from anywhere. Click like and subscribe. Believe me, you'll want to see my revised conclusion. I grew up in a white colonial with blue shutters and a well-kept lawn in a charming Boston suburb. We appeared to be the stereotypical American family: mom, dad, 2 daughters. Christmas mornings with mountains of gifts and birthday celebrations with matching decorations are depicted in my childhood pictures. Disney World holidays with the family. However, images can be deceptive. I remember feeling different for the first time when I was 5 years old. Allison, my sister, was sprinting through the living room when she knocked over a vase. I was busy cleaning up the bits when my mother hurried in. What took place here? She made a demand. Automatically, I said. I did it, not even considering it. I later heard my mom talking on the phone. Rebecca has always had a great desire to please. Unlike Allison, Allison is a spirit animal. Spirit. My parents used the term to describe Allison's tantrums at stores. When she resisted eating her veggies, she retorted that I was being obedient when I completed my assignments without asking. Allison was outstanding when she eventually completed hers. At first, the differences were not noticeable. The larger bedroom was given to Allison. On family night, Allison had the opportunity to select the restaurants. My artwork was tucked away in a drawer, and Allison's covered the refrigerator. Your sister needs extra support. When I inquired why my consecutive A's didn't receive the same jubilation as Allison's B-, my father gave me an explanation. You're naturally gifted in the classroom. When I eventually figured out why it was past midnight and I had gotten up for a drink of water, I was 12 years old. In the kitchen, my parents were fighting. Up the stairs came voices. My mother growled, "You've always favored Allison. You seem to be attempting to make up for Rebecca's absence from your life. You also don't own her," my father shot back. "Margaret, when we took her, we made a commitment to never treat her any differently." The glass broke on the hardwood floor after slipping out of my grasp. The argument ceased. I dashed back to my chamber. When my mother checked on me, I pretended to be asleep despite my racing heart, took up the term, gave a simultaneous explanation of everything and nothing. Why? While everyone else's hair was blonde, mine was black. Why were my eyes green whereas everyone else's were blue? Why I never fully fit in, no matter how hard I tried. I waited for them to ask me to explain at breakfast the following morning, to let me know that I was still loved. They remained silent. So I did. Last night, I heard you. I spoke in a quiet but firm voice. I am aware that I was adopted. My dad's newspaper drooped a little. As she was pouring coffee, my mother stopped. Then her eyes never met that tight smile of hers. "Keep your nonsense under check. Rebecca, I'm sure you were dreaming." That was the end of it. No denial, no confirmation. It seemed like the truth. Breakfast as usual and gaslighting. That day, I discovered that image was more significant than reality in our home. I then poured myself into trying to be flawless. Maybe I could be appreciated for my accomplishments if I couldn't be loved for who I was. I established my first tech firm at the age of 22, had a full scholarship to MIT, and finished first in my high school class. My parents were present for my graduation. Naturally, they agreed and grinned for pictures. Congratulations for raising a daughter with such success. However, their gaze were constantly detached, as though they were seeing a project rather than a human. The only person who truly saw me was my grandma, Martha Sammy. She resided in a lovely old Victorian home in Cambridge that was replete with antiques, books, and the aroma of cinnamon. After the adoption was made public, I spent every summer with her starting when I was 13. Your mother's eyes are in you. Once, when I was 15, she told me, somewhere, it was the only time a family member acknowledged that I had biological parents. Who was she? I inquired. Mom. Martha gave me a hand pat. Someone who was deeply in love with you but was unable to retain you. I'll tell you everything when you're older. But throughout college, Sunday was continually rescheduled. She would always respond. After you graduate, when I inquired, following graduation. It was when your career was established. Later, it evolved into when the moment was appropriate. My connection with my parents, meanwhile, continued to worsen. In a patent dispute, my primary rival was represented by my father's legal practice. Family is one thing, business is another, he remarked when I questioned him about the conflict of interest. Allison followed in our father's footsteps and became a surgeon. Their common medical background became yet another factor that kept me out of family discussions. Even though he had transitioned to corporate law long before we were born, 3 years ago, during Thanksgiving dinner, the last estrangement took place. Grandmother Martha was there, still as keen as ever, but weaker than I remembered. The topic of discussion shifted to the recent success of my business. We recently received significant funding for a medical diagnostic tool driven by AI. Rebecca would always do something unique, in my opinion. With pride, Grandmother said. Sure. She was always trying to prove herself. It was my mother's tone again, contemptuous and familiar. Prove yourself, I repeated. Do you believe I've been doing that for years? Is it not? My dad sniffed his wine and inquired. The majority of adopted children experience a period of excessive success. It's actually pretty common. I was struck into silence by the nonchalant confirmation of what they had denied for 15 years. Dad Allison had a startled expression. What do you say? Yes. She is aware. My mom gave me a dismissive wave. I don't see why we should bring it up at dinner, even if she's known since she was 12. I responded, my voice trembling each time. You've denied it my entire life. I felt ridiculous for even bringing it up. We felt that was a better option. My father answered, as though he were addressing a challenging customer. Kids require consistency. I retorted that I needed truth. My mother answered sharply. The truth is, we gave you everything. The greatest education, a lovely home, every benefit. The majority of adoptive kids would be appreciative. The hand of Grandmother Martha landed firmly on the table. That's sufficient. Margaret. However, it was insufficient. 20 years of gaslit reality, conditional affection, and feeling alienated all came rushing out. I said, You never wanted me. You wanted to think of me as the ideal daughter to flaunt at gatherings. The person who would support your parenting style without ever asking you to do any real parenting. A napkin dropped on the ground as I got to my feet. I'm done attempting to merit love that ought to have come naturally to me. That night, I walked out without turning around. I updated my phone number, relocated to a different apartment. The only person I kept in contact with was my grandmother Martha. We get together away from my parents' house for our weekly Sunday brunches. She once said, They do love you. They simply aren't sure how to express it. Love shouldn't be this difficult, I said. She passed away quietly while sleeping 6 months ago. I missed the funeral because I had to travel for work. I didn't get a call from my folks about it. I learned that Grandmother Martha had given me her home and most of her property through a letter from an attorney. She never gave me the opportunity to know the truth about my birth parents. However, Destiny had different ideas on how to divulge family secrets. The accident day began as any other Tuesday would. I was testing our most recent software update at our Cambridge office. Everything was gloomy and a little blurry in the corners due to the soft, lingering New England drizzle. Rebecca, you should go home. Samantha, my business partner, recommended 8 o'clock. I've never been good at leaving things incomplete, but the update can wait till morning. It was past 10 when I eventually departed, and the rain had intensified into a monsoon. Although my apartment was only 15 minutes away, I recall thinking I should hire a car service. What might occur in 15 minutes, locals are aware of the blind spot at the intersection of Maple and 3rd. Since the drunk motorist who struck me wasn't from the area, I recall my car suddenly filling with headlights that were unbelievably brilliant. The clatter of metal on metal, this weird spinning feeling. My automobile flipped twice before colliding with a lamppost. They subsequently informed me. Although the airbag saved my life, the collision broke my collarbone and 3 ribs. I suffered a traumatic brain injury when my head struck the side window with considerable force. I'm having flashbacks to the ambulance, pulsing red lights. While wearing an oxygen mask over my face, a paramedic repeatedly sang my name. Then it got dark. The next time I realized, it was a clinical, far-off voice. I could hear this being cognizant but unable to react, yet I was unable to move or open my eyes. Would subsequently be clarified as a result of the brain damage and the coma they put me in to lessen swelling. Significant temporal lobe trauma. We've managed to control the intracranial pressure, a woman's voice said. However, the next day will be crucial. Have we found our next of kin yet? This time it's an emergency contact on the voicemail. Additionally, mother is listed on her phone. We've made a call. They will arrive soon. When you're floating in the dark, time doesn't matter. I'm not sure if I heard them come minutes or hours later. Mitchell, Mr. and Mrs. The neurologist working on your daughter's case is me, Dr. Chen. What took place? As usual. My father's voice was controlled and tense. The collision, my injuries, the induced coma, and the uncertain prognosis were all discussed by Dr. Chen. Furthermore, what precisely are you doing for her? My mother sounded annoyed, as though my traumatic brain injury interfered with her routine. In order to give her brain time to heal, we are currently keeping an eye on her intracranial pressure and keeping her in a coma. After she is stabilized, surgery will be required to fix the orbital fracture. Once more, my dad, what sort of expenses are we considering here? A pause occurred. Dr. Chen must have been glaring at them. Medical professionals only treat family members who are especially heartless. When she eventually said, "We'll need authorization for the surgical procedure, and your insurance information would be helpful," my mother said, her voice trailing off. There's been a misunderstanding. In reality, Rebecca is not our daughter. I apologize. The physician sounded perplexed. You are on her list of emergency contacts. She was taken in by adoption. My father gave a formal explanation with ease. The documents were never filed correctly. The doctor's voice has called a lot. I notice, however, as her contacts for emergencies. My mom interrupted. You don't understand me. We're not accountable for her. She is not owed anything by us. I would be emotionally abandoned by them for the rest of my life. However, this was not like the others. This was abandoning me to perish without permission to receive medical care. Then the doctor started. Just don't treat her, my father urged. Isn't there any sort of public fund for patients who are impoverished? Your daughter is seriously hurt, Mr. Mitchell. But she won't have surgery. My mother argued that she wasn't our daughter. In violation of the law. Not at all. Then there was quiet, the sound of rustling papers. The issue of Martha Mitchell's estate is another. A nurse, stated a fresh voice. Perhaps the patient was identified as the main recipient. My father answered hastily. That's a family matter. When my mother made that will, she wasn't acting rationally. We had been intending to challenge it. I understand, the doctor responded icily. Well, we'll have to act under emergency measures if the family is unwilling to approve therapy. Please record this conversation and get in touch with Hospital Legal. Nurse Davis. My mother said, We're going now. Please don't get in touch with us about this patient ever again. Steps. The door opens and shuts. They had vanished. I made an effort to move, to scream, to show that I could hear them leaving me. However, I was confined to my fractured body. I am a prisoner of my thoughts. The nurse, Davis reportedly remarked gently, "I've never seen anything like it." Their own daughter. "We're rich," the doctor mumbled. After contacting legal, "Look for further contacts on her phone. Someone must care deeply about this woman." Time went by. I slipped into and out of consciousness. As the drug passed through my system, I experienced intermittent pain. Around me, several voices could be heard, medical terminology. I was unable to understand completely. However, one voice grew recognizable. Kind, steady, Rebecca. "I'm merely transforming your form. You're doing well." Emily Davis, a nurse, saved my life. Throughout her shifts, she kept me informed about my condition, described the treatments, and provided me with weather updates. She would use her phone to play music, everything from Taylor Swift to classical music. According to recent studies, coma patients are capable of hearing us. "I'm not leaving her alone," she told someone, not after her parents' actions. 3 days following the mishap, through the one-sided discussions Emily had, after I found out that the hospital had found Samantha, my friend and business partner hurried to the hospital, approved the treatments, and was battling my parents on several fronts. "Your friend is unique." While taking a sponge bath, Emily told me, "Every day, her lawyer is here to make sure you have what you require." It seems that your parents are already alleging you are incapable of managing your grandmother's estate. Irony made me want to chuckle. They sought to take advantage of my resultant situation to grab my inheritance after leaving me to die. For them, it was exactly right on brand. On the 5th day, the procedure was performed. I recall being wheeled somewhere with brilliant lights above. Then nothing until I woke up in recovery with a headache that was pounding. Emily's voice, too. "Rebecca, you succeeded. The surgery proceeded flawlessly. Your brain edema is already decreasing. According to Dr. Chin, tomorrow, they will begin the process of removing you from the coma." Gradually, true consciousness returned. I was able to open my eyes to dazzling brightness after first being able to squeeze a hand when instructed. Then came the excruciating procedure of removing the breathing tube, during which my first word came out of strange-feeling lips. General Emily of Massachusetts responded, "Coming into view, you're all right. You will be all right." However, I wasn't feeling well. Not at all. Because I had to think about what I had heard now. Not only had my parents abandoned me all my life, but they had really left me to perish. It hurt to recover. My damaged body was in excruciating pain with every movement. I had vertigo the first time they helped me set up, and I puked. I was sobbing and sweating when I took my first steps with the physical therapist. However, the psychological scar from knowing my parents abandoned me when I most needed them was far worse than any physical suffering. Every recovery moment was tainted by that knowledge, which lingered in my veins like poison. During her daily visits, Samantha would exclaim, "You're doing fantastic." She had delivered my laptop, made choices for the company, and answered questions from the media regarding my accident. "You're recuperating twice as quickly as anticipated." According to the physicians, hatred is a strong motivator. I made a feeble joke. Samantha eventually told me about Grandmother Martha during the 2nd week of my hospital stay. Sitting in the visitor's chair next to my bed, she continued, "I didn't want to add to your stress. However, you should be aware that you have been contacted by your grandmother's lawyer. The will is being challenged by your parents." What I had trouble sitting up straight. "For what reasons?" "They're saying your injuries have rendered you mentally incompetent." Samantha's face was serious. 3 days following your accident, they submitted the paperwork. It was not a coincidence. After leaving me to die in my hospital room, they went straight to a lawyer to grab my inheritance. I requested that I speak with her lawyer. The following morning, a dignified guy in his 60s, with silver hair and gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, James Wright, came. For 30 years, he had been my grandmother's lawyer. "Mitchell, Miss." He gave me a formal greeting. "I'm glad to see you getting well. Your grandma would be happy. Her residence is being targeted for theft by my parents." Without a prelude, I said, placing his briefcase on the bedside table. He nodded. Citing your health, they requested an immediate conservatorship. I've included medical records from your physicians attesting to your ability to handle your affairs. Until you can come to court, the judge has put the estate on hold. When your medical team decides that there's no hurry, the resources are safe. He opened his briefcase and took out a big packet. I'm giving you this at your grandmother's request. She could tell you personally if she had ever had any negative outcomes. In my palms, the envelope felt weighty. What is it? The reality. I think he got up to go. Rebecca, she cherished you. Never questioned that. I didn't open it till the evening. When the hospital had gone to sleep and the nurses had completed their rounds, there were several official-looking documents and a letter written in my grandmother's beautiful script. The letter started. My dearest Rebecca, I didn't fulfill my commitment to tell you everything face to face. If you're reading this, ignore the cowardice of an elderly woman. Speaking certain truths out loud is more difficult than others. All your life, you've been curious about your birth parents. In actuality, your mother was Caroline, my niece. When she became pregnant, she was 18, young, frightened, and unfit to be a parent. Her boyfriend from high school, who departed for college and didn't want anything to do with the child, is your biological father. I proposed adopting a family member. Richard, my son, and Margaret, his wife, had been trying unsuccessfully to conceive. It appeared to be the ideal answer. Your biological family would have the child and you would stay in touch with them. They were in dire need. I was unaware at the time that Margaret was already expecting Allison. Only a few weeks after they brought you home, she found out. All of a sudden, they had 2 baby daughters rather than just one. I have seen how they have handled you differently throughout the years. I repeatedly challenged Richard about it. He would always pledge to improve, to treat you with equal love. However, some people are unable to appreciate anything that is not derived from their own blood. The formal adoption was finalized, regardless of how valuable the gift was. Legally, you are their daughter, regardless of what they may have told you. I've attached the court records that demonstrate this, along with all the rights that go along with it. The truth about your birth mother is also included. 5 years ago, Caroline lost her life in a vehicle accident. She frequently inquired about you because she was never married and had no other children. I informed her about your achievements, your development into the exceptional lady you are today. You have the right to keep the house and whatever I leave you, by blood, not merely by my decision. In every important way, you are my family. I sincerely hope you will pardon me for not informing you sooner. I may have been shielding myself from having to defend my decision to place you with parents who were unable to show you the love you needed. Even if I believed I was shielding you, know that ever since Caroline put you in my arms, you have been my undying devotion. Love to you all, always. Mom, Martha. I took 3 readings of the letter. I'm crying uncontrollably. I then looked over the papers. Caroline Mitchell was listed as my mother on my birth certificate. The adoption documents, signed by my parents. My parents are Margaret and Richard Mitchell. According to the updated birth certificate, everything was there. The truth, the evidence, the affirmation that it is morally, legally, and blood-based. My parents had lied to the doctors, to Allison, and to themselves, and I was a Mitchell. I made 2 choices that evening. First, no matter how hard I had to work, I would totally recover. Second, I will see to it that my parents were held accountable for their deeds. With newfound resolve, I put myself into physical therapy after suffering from traumatic brain injury, 2 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and facial fractures. I wouldn't let anything stop me. In a matter of weeks, I moved from walker to con. Even my therapists were surprised. You're a machine. Jake, my physical therapist, made a remark during one really taxing session. I said, enduring the pain to finish another round of exercises. I have somewhere important to be. For several weeks following the mishap, I was given the all clear to go by Dr. Tim, Emily assisted me in putting away the gifts, cards, and flowers that had gathered in my room, most from friends and coworkers, no family members. Now what? As she walked me to the hospital exit, where Samantha was waiting in her car, Emily asked, when my own family refused to stand up for me? I looked up at the nurse. After Samantha brought me to her apartment, where I would be residing throughout my outpatient treatment, I went home and wrote a letter. I gazed at the streets of Boston beyond the window. My folks were probably still conspiring somewhere across town. Still lying. I'm still hoping to get away with everything. They were unaware of what was about to happen. My war room on the wall was Samantha's guest room. I made a chronology that linked my accident to the legal actions taken by my parents. As I collected data and developed a plan, my laptop became my command center. You ought to be sleeping, Samantha was concerned. One evening, they brought me tea. When it's finished, I'll relax, I answered. Keeping my eyes on the email I was sending to James, correct. Securing my legal situation was the first thing I did. James affirmed what was written in the letter from grandmother. My adoption was entirely lawful. The allegation made by my parents that it was informal was blatantly false. There is no reason for them to challenge the will. James gave me that assurance during one of our daily talks, but now they're attempting a different tactic, saying that since they are your parents, they ought to act as your legal guardians while you're recovering. I couldn't believe you left me in the hospital. They claim that they were in shock and that there was a misunderstanding. In their affidavits, they expressed genuine care for your well-being. They probably have. I remembered the security footage Emily had shown me from the hospital. Can the hospital records be subpoenaed? My room was equipped with security cameras. James responded, already done. And I could hear the smirk on his face. Their affidavits are drastically contradicted by the footage. Property security came next. While the estate remained in probate, grandmother's home was deserted. However, I was aware that my parents still possessed keys. To put cameras throughout the property and replace the locks, I engaged a security firm. The security specialist clarified that we may set up remote monitoring. Any activity will be visible to you in real time on both your computer and phone. Perfect, I said. Additionally, I want a secure cloud server to store the video backup. The hardest part of composing the letter came next. I must have written it 20 times, with everything from irate charges to stern, clinical truths. It didn't feel right. One night, when I ruined yet another attempt, Samantha commented, "You're overanalyzing things. Simply speak from the heart." I confessed that my heart wanted to destroy their entire universe. Then say that. I gave a head shake. Retaliation is not the point here. The truth is at issue. It's about being noticed at last. During a consultation with Dr. Morris, the realization occurred. I had been seeing the same therapist since I got out of the hospital. What is it that you truly desire from them? After I had explained the problem, she inquired, I want them to take responsibility for their actions. My entire life, not only at the hospital. And the question struck me like a blow to the body if they never do. After that, I too want to be free of their need. I wrote the letter that would be waiting for them that evening. It comes from a position of clarity rather than rage. I described the lies they told regarding my adoption, their decades of emotional neglect, and their eventual betrayal at the hospital. I sent copies of the court records attesting to the validity of my adoption, as well as the surveillance footage that showed them leaving me. However, I also mentioned forgiveness. For my sake, not for theirs. I was freeing myself from any duty to them and freeing them from any duty to me. I don't need your affection, your recognition, or your approval anymore. In the last paragraph, I wrote, "Without you, I am whole." When the time was appropriate, I handed the letter to James to put in the house after sealing it in an envelope. When James called to let me know that my parents had planned a visit to my grandmother's home, presumably to gather sentimental items prior to the estate being settled, the last piece came together. The documents were submitted to the probate court. He clarified that they would be arriving on Saturday at 2:00 p.m. while Allison is present. My sister and I hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving 3 years prior. I didn't know if she was aware of our parents' actions. She is mentioned in the court document. Yes. I inhaled deeply. Then it's time. James put my letter on the dining room table at my grandmother's house that Saturday morning. The security firm attested to the camera's functionality. I stayed at Samantha's apartment with her so we could watch the feed on my laptop. My parents' Mercedes came into the driveway at precisely 2:03 p.m. There was no going back once the plot got underway. I saw my dad and Allison walk up to Grandma's front door through the security cameras, frequently checking his watch. My father appeared irritated. The smile that never made it to her eyes was worn by my mother at the charity function. Allison's look was unreadable as she hung back a little. My father jiggled the doorknob and complained that the key was not working. Have you tried the rear entrance my mom recommended? The back door shouldn't have to be my option. Allison discreetly corrected him. This is my mother's house. Was it her home? After giving her a quick glance, my father took out his phone. A short chat later, a locksmith showed up. I saw him open the door, get my dad to sign some papers, and leave. At last, my mom exclaimed as she entered. Make sure the silver is still here. Richard, Rebecca may have already emptied the place, but I want to be sure. The casual accusation infuriated me. My shoulder was touched by Samantha. Do not forget why we are doing this, she whispered. As my family passed by my grandmother's house, I nodded while keeping my eyes on the TVs. Everything has the same appearance. As she ran her fingertips over the old sideboard in the entryway, Allison made a remark. My mother, looking at a crystal vase, acknowledged that she always had good taste. Our foyer would look fantastic with this. Your father's boyhood treasures are the reason we're here. She was reminded not to shop by Allison. My mother yelled, "Don't be naive!" Rebecca will never be able to get well enough to inherit this. Everything here will belong to us, regardless of the judge's decision to grant us guardianship. Allison claimed she's currently in physical therapy. According to her physicians, she is progressing remarkably. Her brain injury, however, is a different story. My dad came down the stairs and interrupted. It's all silver, Margaret. I also looked in the master bedroom. Nothing appears to be off-kilter. Has anyone paid her a visit lately? Allison inquired about her well-being. My parents looked at each other. According to my mother, the hospital staff has been quite obstructive. Also, you are aware of Rebecca's personality. She has always had a strong sense of independence. If she had heard me talk about that driving path, my father whispered, "Are you really holding her accountable for being struck by an intoxicated driver?" Allison's voice was disbelieving. My mother reassured me. Of course not. Your dad is just upset. For all of us, this has been difficult. My letter was waiting on the polished mahogany table in the dining room when they entered. What is this? The envelope was picked up by my father. On the front was my grandmother's handwriting with my name. James had referred to an old birthday card. It's meant for Rebecca. As Allison noted, she's not present, is she? After removing it from my father's grasp, my mother ripped it open. Her face went pale as she started reading. What is it? My dad made a silent demand. She gave the letter to him. He glanced at it. With every page, his look grew darker. This is ridiculous. Finally, he spluttered. Manipulations and lies? What is it saying? My father held back the letter as Allison reached for it. There is nothing for you to worry about? Family-run company? As Allison grabbed the letter out of his hand, she emphasized, I am family. Her eyes widened as she started reading. What's this about? Parents leaving Rebecca behind in the medical facility? Suddenly, my mother fell into a dining chair. That wasn't the case. We were stunned. The physicians were so gloomy. You told them she wasn't your biological daughter and that you owed her nothing? According to this, that you departed without approving therapy made Allison's voice tremble. That isn't contextualized. My dad blushed. All we said was that the adoption was difficult. Allison's face was getting paler as she read on. A link to security footage is provided. She took out her phone and entered the letter's URL. The dining room remained quiet for a few minutes, but for the faint sound of Allison's phone. My parents' voices made it quite evident that they owed me nothing and that I wasn't their daughter, that they wouldn't approve medical care. You abandoned her to perish. At the end of the video, Allison whispered, "Your own daughter." "She's not," my mom said. Then she stopped herself. "Not what?" "Not your daughter." "Because she certainly is based on these materials." Allison held up the adoption documents that came with the letter. "She was lawfully adopted by you. After raising her for 28 years, you left her when she most needed you. The intricacies my father initiated are beyond your comprehension. I completely get it. Stop him, Allison. You've always treated her differently. As I've known, I assumed it was because she was so self-assured and independent. I never thought it would be because you didn't think of her as your biological daughter." When pressed, my mother's arrogant manner returned, and she straightened up. "We did everything we could for her. A top-notch education. All but love." Allison came to a close, with the exception of the one item on the security feed that she truly needed. I saw my sister's epiphany come to her, the pieces coming together, the patterns she had seen but never understood. Slowly, she replied, "All those times you disregarded her accomplishments. You made her feel inferior all those times. It wasn't due to your lofty expectations. You didn't think she belonged, which is why—" "That is untrue. My dad was adamant. We always wished her the best, the finest." Allison's voice lifted. "You abandoned her to die in a hospital by herself after causing brain damage and breaking bones. What makes that the best?" My mom abruptly got up. "We must locate her. Becca, it's obvious that she has been poisoned against us. Samantha has always been a negative influence. She is aware of the conservatorship application. Does she not?" My father saw that he was reviewing the letter once more. "She is aware that we are attempting to seize control of Mother's property." "Do you only care about that?" Allison questioned with astonishment. "The cash. The home. What about your almost dead daughter?" "Naturally," my mother said. "We care about Rebecca, but given her situation, we must be realistic. You worsened her condition by leaving her. You're now attempting to take advantage of Allison's illness to steal her inheritance." My dad's expression stiffened. "That's sufficient. Allison, you don't care about this. I'm not concerned. My sister is named Rebecca." My mother corrected me reflexively. "Half-sister." Then, as though attempting to force the words back into her mouth, she put her hand there. Allison gazed at her. "Are you saying that you don't consider her family?" She appeared to be physically hurt by the knowledge. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the paperwork and letter. "I am unable to be present at this time. I can't be close to you two." "Hold on. Allison." As she made her way to the door, my father called, "I am going to be at my flat. Don't give me a call. I need some time to think about this." She gave them a hazy gesture. "All of this." My parents stood in startled silence after she left. "Look at what you did now." "At last," my mom growled. "Allison is now against us because of you. It was you who referred to Rebecca as her half-sister. She is, in fact, our two girls now despise us. Additionally, Rebecca will use that video and this letter to discredit us in court." With his hands raking through his thinning hair, my father paced the dining room. "Gerald, their attorney, needs to be called. He will be able to twist this. We can say that we were upset and unable to think rationally. The film, Richard. The video shows us in complete clarity and tranquility. Let's say it was altered. These days, deepfakes are common." My mom slumped back in her seat. "It's a nightmare. They called their lawyer, looked around the house for assets they might claim as family heirlooms, and made lists of possible character witnesses who could attest to their parental devotion as they plotted for one further hour. Observing it was both terrible and enlightening. At no point did they show any concern for my welfare. I never once wondered if they had treated me unfairly. When they eventually left with a few minor antiques, their only concerns were repairing the damage, protecting their name, and keeping access to my grandmother's money. I shut down the laptop in spite of Allison's prior protests. That's precisely what I expected. Samantha answered gently. For her, I completed. They are still the same. They won't. An unknown number texted me, making my phone vibrate. Allison is here. We must speak. Please. I took a long look at the message before answering. The cafe on Cambridge Street tomorrow at 10 a.m. What happened next, I was at last prepared to deal with it how I wanted to. When I got to the Cambridge Street cafe, it was packed. Allison was there already, leaning on my cane. Her eyes widened at my still healing facial injuries as I walked up to her, who was sitting at a corner table with 2 unfinished coffees in front of her. Rebecca. She stood clumsily, vacillating between a handshake and an embrace. All we could do was nod uncomfortably. Allison. I slid into the seat across from her. Did you wish to speak? She shoved one of the coffees in my direction. 1 sugar and black. Do you still think that I gave a nod? She recalled being surprised. Regards. She shouted out that they were leaving you in the hospital, but I had no idea. I swear I had no idea. I think I did. And you did. Deliberate harshness was not one of Allison's numerous flaws. Have you read all of the letter? She watched the video and gave a pitiful nod. It's unbelievable to me that they would harm anyone, much less their own kid, not in front of them. I made the automatic correction. However, you are healthy and lawfully. We were raised together. My sister is you. Across the table, she reached for my hand, but I resisted a little. Allison, 28 years. For 28 years, they have shown you their undivided adoration while treating me like a finite resource. Did you fail to notice? She turned red. They were tougher on you. I noticed. I assumed it was due to your intelligence or the fact that you were the eldest. Their standards were higher. They said they owed me nothing and that I wasn't their biological daughter. I continued to speak steadily, but I could feel the same pain inside. Those weren't the most popular words at the time. They were telling the truth. Allison claimed that it wasn't my truth. My sister is you. My elder sister helped me with my college applications, taught me how to ride a bike, and defended me after I wrecked my dad's car. I had done all of those things because that's what big sisters do, even when they're starving for the affection their brother receives and they're jealous of the golden child. Allison, what do you want from me? The directness of the inquiry appeared to surprise her. I desire for us to reunite as sisters, true sisters. You've been missed. These 3 years, as well as our parents, in this view, where do they fit in? Her face grew serious. I'm not sure. I'm not talking to them at the moment, what they carried out. I'm unable to forgive it. I told you that they would try to get you to make amends. They will downplay the events, change the past. I am also familiar with their playbook. She forced a feeble smile. I've spent my entire life witnessing their history being rewritten. For a while, we sat in silence. The sound of the cafe washed over us. May I ask you a question? At last, Allison read the letter you left for them. In fact, what did it say, everything? I sipped my coffee, thinking about it. After that, I took out my phone and opened the file in which I had stored the finished version. I started reading. Dear Margaret and Richard, Mom and Dad no longer feel honest. Therefore, I'm calling you by your first names. Children are protected by their parents. Parents prioritize the needs of their kids over their own. You haven't done either. You will have attempted to declare me incompetent by the time you read this. In order to manage the inheritance, you will have already submitted documentation. I was abandoned by my grandmother, Martha. You'll have already started to construct a story that portrays me as an unappreciative daughter and you as worried parents. I'll save you the trouble. No matter how hard you try, I'm still alive. Your unwillingness to approve my therapy has been verified by the physicians at Massachusetts General Hospital. Your precise words were recorded by the security cameras. She isn't actually our daughter. She has not owed anything by us. For 28 years. I've made an effort to win your affection. I excelled academically. I created a profitable business. I tried my hardest to make you proud. It was never sufficient, as I was never sufficient. Not your blood, not your biological daughter. I received a letter from Grandmother Martha that explained everything. Caroline, her niece, was my birth mother. The adoption was obligatory and lawful. I have supplied copies of all pertinent documentation, regardless of what you told the hospital staff. A USB drive with the hospital security footage is also attached. It will be presented as proof. Should you keep trying to manage my inheritance or assert your guardianship over me, the purpose of this letter is not retaliation. The truth is at issue. The reality that I deserve your love, but you were unable to give it to me. The fact that you decided to leave me when I most needed you, I pardon you. I deserve to be at peace, not because you deserve to be forgiven. I absolve you of all responsibility to me, and I absolve myself of any responsibility to you. I don't need your affection, your recognition, or your approval anymore. Without you, I am whole. Mitchell, Rebecca, P.S. This house is legally mine, and the locks have been changed. Any future correspondence should be sent to James Wright, my lawyer. Allison had been crying quietly when I finished reading. She muttered, "I've never heard anything so honest." The saddest, too. I put my phone away. It had to be stated. Yesterday, I received 6 calls from them, left voicemails expressing their concern for you and their want to support your recuperation. She gave a disgusted shake of her head. They seem to inhabit a different reality. Do they? I concurred. One in which they are consistently the protagonists. Now what? She inquired. Using the inheritance, James is dealing with the guardianship claim. Their case should be ruined by the hospital footage alone. Then I shrugged my shoulders. I go on. I create a life devoid of them, as well as myself. She spoke in a little voice. Is there space for me in that life? My sister, my biological half-sister, was the subject of my studies. It turned out that the golden kid had lived her entire life enjoying the favors of our parents. In addition, the woman seated in front of me is suddenly choose me over them and truth over comfort. To be honest, I don't know yet. Allison, we have a long history together. Much pain. I get it. She wiped away her tears and nodded. But if you don't mind, I'd want to try. Grandmother Martha's letter about family being people who love you came to mind. Not necessarily your blood relatives. Small steps, I answered at last. We begin modestly and monitor its progress. You could see the relief on her face. Little steps. I am capable of doing it. We cautiously discussed neutral subjects as we drank our coffees. One of my company's most recent ventures is her residency at Boston General. It was civil, but not yet comfortable. A kind of start. My parents discovered the letter and, as expected, intensified their efforts. In an attempt to locate a judge who would approve their conservatorship request, they contacted every member of the legal community they knew. They claimed parental rights and tried to see my medical records. They even made an attempt to speak with my doctors directly. It didn't work. James Wright was tenacious in defending my rights. And the hospital footage was incriminating. The plea for conservatorship was turned down. When it came to grandmother's estate, the probate judge decided in my favor. Legally, the home and everything in it belonged to me. Allison called me 3 weeks after we met at the cafe. To challenge the adoption, they are requesting a hearing. She didn't introduce herself. They say they were forced to adopt you by Grandmother Martha. That initially, they had no desire to do so. The remarks ought to have inflamed and stung. I was strangely at ease. Permit them. The documentation is easy to understand. The adoption was lawful. They no longer care about winning, Allison lamented. The goal is to cause you pain. I am aware. I had known all along. How are you doing? I vacated my apartment. I am staying with a hospital friend. I was unable to. I couldn't be with them at the moment. I apologize. I was too. Allison was losing her parents, despite everything, to the dedicated, caring parents she had known all her life. Her world must have fallen apart when she discovered they were capable of such wickedness. Don't be. You're not to blame. She hesitated. I was actually curious. The house of your grandma is quite large, isn't it? In spite of myself. I grinned. Allison, are you extending an invitation to move in with me only for a short time? Quickly, she said. Until I discover somewhere else. And only if you feel at ease doing so. It was a significant stride beyond cafe coffee. But maybe massive moves were in order. I informed her that I rarely get home before 8, and that the East Wing has its own bathroom. Really, do you mean it? Little steps? Do you recall? Let's see how it turns out. We hung up, and I sat across town, staring out the window of my makeshift abode. My parents were planning what to do next. They were still unable to come to terms with what they had done. They still can't accept me as their daughter, worthy of affection. However, I wasn't defined by their rejection for the first time since the accident. My survival, my fortitude, and the family I was deciding to surround myself with defined who I was. Not by altering them. The letter had accomplished its goal. That could only be accomplished by relieving me of the need for them to change. My physical rehabilitation was deemed complete by Dr. Chen 6 months after the accident. My physical therapy appointments were cut to once a month for maintenance after the last case ended, and the final follow-up MRI revealed no brain trauma left. At our last visit, she informed me, "You're a medical miracle. The majority of people with your injuries would still be undergoing rigorous rehabilitation." I was well motivated, I said. Reflecting on my parents' letter, I was resolved to take back my life. I went to live with grandmother Martha. It's early spring in my house now. I kept the Victoria's basic structure intact, but it needed some modifications. The elaborate woodwork, the transom of stained glass, and the spacious porch where I had spent summer hours talking about hopes and books with my grandma. As scheduled, Allison moved into the East Wing. At first, living together was awkward. There are too many sensitivities to manage and too many childhood habits to unlearn. However, we respected one another's personal space and set ground rules. We started establishing a relationship based on choice rather than duty gradually and cautiously. Samantha, my business partner, and nurse Emily, who left the hospital to work for a home healthcare firm, started coming in frequently. In keeping with the custom I'd established with grandmother Martha, James Wright joined us for Sunday brunches. One Sunday, while Samantha laid the table and Allison and Emily argued over the merits of various medical specializations, he said, "You've created quite the family here." Selected family. I made a gentle correction. The finest sort. My parents tried to regain control one last time. They claimed that my letter and the hospital video had seriously damaged their mental health, and they filed a lawsuit alleging emotional anguish. The action was desperate, clear-cut retaliation. Since truth could not be deemed damaging, the judge dismissed the case with prejudice. Talk. He wrote that they had deserted his daughter during her most vulnerable period and were now trying to punish her for just recording their desertion. Former coworkers, distant family members, and pals from country clubs all found out about Richard and Margaret Mitchell's actions after the ruling, which was reported by local news. Overnight, their carefully maintained social status fell apart. A month later, they moved to Florida, leaving Boston without bidding farewell to either of their kids. "Are you all right? When did we find out that they were leaving?" Allison questioned. I gave the question serious thought. "Yes," I finally said. "I believe I am. In actuality, they had abandoned me long before they actually went. It was possible that they had never been with me at all. I'm over the legal battles. My focus shifted to the future. In spite of my absence, my tech company had prospered. Samantha's leadership is much appreciated. We were now creating new software for patients with traumatic brain injuries who were unable to talk but were still conscious. Motivated by my experience in the hospital. It's known as Bridge Gap. Over dinner, I gave Emily an explanation. In order to assist physicians in assessing the state of consciousness in patients who are not responding, It monitors eye movements and brain activity. You would have benefited from it, she said. I clarified that it would have benefited the doctors. I was aware that I was awake. They didn't. My suffering was given meaning by the initiative, which turned a horrific event into something that may benefit others. Martha, grandmother, would have been pleased. Regarding Allison, our relationship kept changing, talking about our early years, the favoritism she had received, and her own role in keeping me alone were all painful. However, there was also recovery. She took takeout home. I assisted her in studying for her board examinations when I was working late. We spent Sunday nights making fun of bad reality TV shows together after realizing we both liked them. I had no idea you were witty. At one point, she informed me, giggling at my perception of a very dramatic reality star. You didn't even know me. I answered without resentment. It was just the truth. I hosted a dinner party in my dining room at Grandmother Martha's exactly 1 year after the tragedy. Samantha and her new boyfriend were present. Emily brought her spouse. Yes, James did bring a bottle of pricey champagne. Allison invited one of her hospital co-workers, a good-looking neurosurgeon who gave her a very clear look of curiosity. I was gazing around the table at these individuals who had chosen to be in my life and who had come through for me when it counted. My parents' approval had nothing to do with the sense of fulfillment I had. I raised my glass to my family and said, I'd like to make a toast. Love, choice, and being there for family when it counts most define us rather than blood or the law. They echoed the clinking of glasses. I ended up on the porch swing where Grandmother Martha and I had spent so many evenings after everyone had left except Allison. Is there space for another? With hesitation, Allison asked. I patted the area next to me while hovering in the doorway, and she took a seat. Ever ponder their current whereabouts? After some time, she inquired, What are they doing? I acknowledged that it hurts occasionally, but not anymore. How did you accomplish that? Put an end to the pain. I reflected on the letter I had written and the truth it had spoken. About the liberty it had bestowed upon me. I no longer held them to unrealistic expectations. At last, I said. And I began creating a meaningful existence that didn't require their approval. Allison gave a slow nod. That component is still a work in progress. I told her it takes time. Furthermore, you don't have to work alone. Twilight was in the distance as we sat in friendly stillness and watched fireflies dance in the crowd. I was momentarily reminded of the accident that had altered my life when a car backfired, but I was thankful for the journey that had led me. Not afraid or hurt. I had almost died because of the truth, but I had also been freed at last. For those of you who have experienced the pain of conditional love or betrayal by family, I hope my tale may speak to you. Keep in mind that family is determined by deeds, not by blood, and by who sticks by you when everyone else leaves. Have you ever had to reinterpret your definition of family? Leave a comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and tell someone who might need to know that they, too, can create a life full of loved ones who genuinely care about them. I appreciate you listening to my tale and sharing in my healing process. Keep in mind that sometimes the family we build has more influence than the one we are born into.